Iserlohn, April 15, 1945. 3 tank destroyers roll into Schiller Square in perfect formation, engines still running, crews still alive, armor still unpierced by a single Allied shell. It is, without exaggeration, the most dignified moment the Jagdtiger ever had. And it is a surrender. That's the joke buried inside this machine's entire story. Germany built the heaviest armored vehicle to ever fight in the Second World War. A 71-ton wall of steel with a gun that could kill a tank from 2 miles away, and armor that nothing in the Allied arsenal could crack head-on. Of roughly 80 built, only about a fifth were ever lost in actual combat. And it still didn't matter. To understand why the most physically dominant tank of the war ended its life surrendering intact instead of burning on a battlefield, you have to go back to a decision made in 1942, before the vehicle even existed. Spring 1942. The war is still going Germany's way. The Army General Staff puts in a request: mount the enormous 128mm gun onto a self-propelled chassis. Build a heavy assault gun that can smash Allied fortifications and punch through anything that rolls at it. Here's the hinge. By the time the thing was actually finished, 2 years had passed, and the war Germany was fighting had completely changed shape. The original need for the vehicle had vanished, and it was repurposed as a heavy tank destroyer instead. Think about that. Germany spent 2 years and enormous industrial resources building a bunker buster for a war of advance, and delivered it into a war of retreat. Bureaucrats in Berlin even argued for months over what to call it, whether it belonged to the artillery or the tank corps, while American and Soviet factories kept building tanks by the thousand. The gun was never the problem. The timing was. 150 were ordered, fewer than 80 were ever built, and the ones that did roll off the line were saddled with an engine that had no business hauling them. The motor used to move this 79-ton mass of steel was the same 690 horsepower engine used on the much lighter Panther tank. Picture strapping a compact car's engine to a fully loaded cement truck and asking it to keep pace with the retreat of an army. The gun itself came with its own quiet sabotage. The enormous main gun had to be locked down during the vehicle's movement, or its mounting brackets would wear out, which meant a crew member had to physically climb out of the tank in combat and unlock the gun before it could even fire. A weapon engineered to kill from 2 miles out, and a man had to step outside, in a war zone, just to switch it on. And here's the part the textbooks skip past on their way to calling it a failure. Because when the Jagdtiger actually got into position, it did exactly what it was built to do. December 1944, the village of Chaumont. 4 Jagdtigers destroyed 18 Sherman tanks without taking a single loss. 4 against 18. Not a fair fight, just not in the direction anyone expected. April 11th, near Herborn. A ridge. 10 Jagdtigers. A column of Allied vehicles rolling into view with no idea what was waiting for them. The unit opened fire and destroyed at least 50 vehicles, including 11 Sherman tanks. Some of those kills landed from over 4 kilometers away. Targets that never even saw what killed them. For a moment, it looked like the terror weapon Berlin had promised. It was a false dawn. Because the armor that made the Jagdtiger untouchable had a condition attached to it, and that condition was discipline. The frontal casemate carried 250 millimeters of armor that no Allied tank round could penetrate. but the sides and rear were only 80 millimeters thick, meaning a Jagdtiger that got flanked could be killed from the side, the rear, or from above by aircraft. Near Una, that theory became a body count. 5 American tanks caught a single Jagdtiger at 600 meters. The Jagdtiger took several hits, but none of the American shells could penetrate its frontal armor until its inexperienced commander lost his nerve and rotated the hull, exposing the thin side plating instead of holding position. One shell found the gap. All 6 men inside died. Not a design failure, a discipline failure. The machine did its job perfectly for as long as the crew let it. So if this thing was this dominant in a straight fight, you might be wondering why it barely shows up as a footnote in most histories of the war's final months. The answer is that the enemy that actually beat the Jagdtiger was never on the other side of the battlefield. After crossing back over the Rhine in March 1945, one unit that started with 31 Jagdtigers was down to just 3 operational vehicles. Not from combat, from breakdowns, fuel shortages, and crews destroying their own machines rather than let them fall into Allied hands intact. About 20% were lost in combat. Most of the rest were destroyed by their own crews when abandoned, chiefly due to mechanical breakdowns or the chronic lack of fuel in the final stages of the war. Germany had built, at enormous cost, a machine that Allied gunners genuinely struggled to kill. And then it collapsed anyway, strangled by its own logistics before the enemy ever needed to fire a shot. Which brings us back to Iserlohn, April 15th, 1945. 3 Jagdtigers, engines running, rolling into Schiller Square not as wreckage but as intact, working machines, driving themselves into captivity because there was nowhere left to retreat to and no fuel to get there anyway. Go back one more time to that square, to those 3 tanks with their crews still breathing and their armor still whole. The Jagdtiger never lost a war of steel against steel. It lost a war of oil, factories, and time. The one kind of war its armor couldn't do anything about. It was never beaten. It just ran out of country to fight in. If you want to see what happens when Germany builds the opposite problem, a tank fast enough and cheap enough to flood the battlefield, but too thin-skinned to survive it, that's the Hetzer. And it's an entirely different kind of tragedy.